But in the meantime, let's talk to, what do you think? Oriax in Pennsylvania?
Yeah, let's talk with Oriax.
Oriax, you're live with Eric and B.
Oh, hi. Good to meet you guys. So, I'm from the Discord, but I'm just calling in. So, I hopefully you do well in that precept debate there. So,
yeah, it's going to be on a Christian channel. It's not going to be on my personal one this time, and I think it's going to be fine. The argument itself is we couldn't even get to an argument because it was, well, you atheists think this. I was like, well, no, that's not the case. Well, you atheists all, no, that's not. You're talking to an atheist. And so we wound up on settling on what is atheism. I'm pretty sure that I can talk about that. I will be fine.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
But it says that you're a theist.
Yes, I am I'm a Reconstructionist, Kemetic polytheist.
Can you tell us what that is?
Sure. So Kemetic is the ancient religion of Egypt. So like all the old Egyptian gods, and polytheism is just more than one god. So it just monotheism is like the more Semitic Christian religions, and then Reconstructionist is probably the most heavy term to try to understand there, which is basically looking back upon the religion and the information we have right now and trying to reconstruct as accurately as historically possible what the religion would have been.
I mean, that's cool. Do you believe that the gods depicted in Egyptian mythology are real in the same way you and I are real?
Yes.
Okay, so
some of them. I would say some of them.
Unsure. Why the hesitation?
Because I'm still looking into all of the different. So there are different variants of the myths. So you have conflicting stories, but I think the one that you kind of have to believe is that you'd have to say that Osiris and Horus would have to be. At least were physical. If they're not still on Earth, they would have to be physical because they claimed to the pharaohs have claimed that they were descendants of that. So they would have to be descendants of something that was not human or was godly.
Okay, so somebody said it. How do you know it's true?
I think it's true based upon just the way that they've constructed the culture, but as well, I think it's true because I had and this gets into the question I wanted to ask, but it gets into that I had a personal experience with one of particularly Osiris, and because of that, I looked into the religion, and it just clicked with me, I suppose you can say.
Oriax, can I ask you? Would your personal experience, would that convince us?
Probably not, because you would have to have your own personal experience.
Actually, I think that an experience with sufficient evidence doesn't need to be experienced exactly, right? I can learn all about a murder without having been murdered. Right? We can look at those things. So let's take a look. You've been convinced by a personal experience, but you don't think that talking about that experience would convince us. So why does it convince you?
Personally, because, of course, because I experienced it, but also because of the general message and what happened during it. So he is seen as the god of the dead, and he had two relatives of mine that both spoke to me of their own kind of free will kind of thing. And this was all relatively quick. It was within a few minutes, but it was really strong. I don't think that someone could do this, or like someone could say this or anything. So,
are you aware are you aware that hallucinations, incredibly convincing ones, happen all the time?
Yeah, they happen, but how often would they happen?
all
Actually,
the fucking time.
more frequently than you think. Auditory
Yeah.
hallucination especially is something that is extremely common and can happen for any number of reasons.
I mean, you can be entirely well and still experience a full hallucination.
Yeah.
You don't have to be on drugs or something like that. Now, the question is, how do you determine if you experienced a thing versus, you just mentally checked out for a bit? I mean, that's really important, because even if I granted, everything that you were saying, I'd say, okay, cool, Oriax, how do you know that that thing happened, though? How do you know that it wasn't, some kind of hallucination?
I mean, I guess I wouldn't. I find it as a vision, but I also see it as like, it wouldn't be completely conclusive, but I think that it was just more of the. I had thought that I had like taken everything out that would be like, well, I wasn't on drugs, I wasn't sleepy, I wasn't fatigued, I wasn't like any of these things that normally would lead into this. So it was there was all this slight possibility that it was something that maybe I wasn't well, but I was at the time. So that's why I kind of get hung up on that a little bit.
Right, but that's a good starting place for sure. I had a theist friend of mine ask me what I do in situations where I have what she would consider a spiritual experience. And I say, well, yeah, I check to make sure, have I eaten? Am I in a good place emotionally? Did I get enough sleep? Am I sick? Am I sober? Like all of these different things, and you rule those out. And if you rule all of them out, which it sounds like in your case you have, the answer still isn't God. The answer is, oh, I don't know what caused this, right? You can't eliminate everything and come to a conclusion that wasn't on the list. It's, okay, I've eliminated this entire list. The answer is, I don't know what caused this. I don't know why I experienced this. I'm not denying that you did. I think that you did have a personal experience. I think it sounds cool, but I don't think that just eliminating the usual suspects leaves you any room to extrapolate a supernatural source.
I suppose I can get behind that, because if you want to, I suppose if you want to rule, you can't ever rule everything out. Is what I'm trying to. Is what I think you're trying to say. Is you can't 100% rule everything out, because maybe something was wrong with my brain chemistry or something else that I wouldn't be aware of at the time, because we can't look at my brain at the time and see what was going on. So maybe it was something like that. But
no. The interesting thing is, you have this experience, right? Mm-hmm. Now, if you think that you have a causal link, if you really think, okay, I think that this is the cause of it, that you experienced this god or this Egyptian god. From there, you take that and you go, this is my hypothesis. I'm going to test it. And I'm going to continue to test it until I can see some reliable results. That way I can kind of exclude that just being a one-off. So how did you test it?
Well, at the time I wasn't of this religion, so I started to ask. So I started as people who did worship this religion, who did the gods of the religion, started trying to figure out, like, what does this mean? Like if this is the god, right? So like what does it mean? What's going on? And I just kind of went from there, and then I started like asking the god things, worshiping things, and maybe just from the pure energy or something of it. I don't know. I felt like I got answers.
So I actually think that a lot of that comes from not pure evidence, but peers. I've noticed there are a lot of, especially polytheistic communities, are incredibly supportive, incredibly close, that there's this culture and there's this entire thing that springs up around it. One of those examples is I look at Ocean Keltoy, and we disagree on the God conclusion, but the fact is, as a human being, the dude's great, and the community that he's representing, they're great. Now I think they're wrong, but does that not mean that they can't also provide and care and support each other? I think that community, when tapped into, is amazing.
I think this is an awesome example of how to better research tactics. Because if the first place you went were people who were biased in a direction, and I'm not saying bias is necessarily bad, but if they were already worshiping and believing that this God existed, then of course that was going to be their starting point, and that was going to influence the information that they gave you and the information you were able to get. So I understand the urge to be, I think I know which God this is. Let me reach out to some people who know more about this God. Unfortunately, if they're also worshiping that God, that means that they already have accepted that God's existence and are giving you information that is biased. So one way to go about researching would be making sure that you are starting from a place of neutrality, if at all possible, and starting from a place where the given is not, this God does exist and we worship him.
Okay. All right. So, yeah, just go from there. So how should I go? If I want to go back and just go back to the beginning of this to begin with, how should I go about that? Because I don't even know if I would, but in the case that I would, how would I go about researching that as well? Should I just, because I already know people like that, so it would be hard not to go to them.
Right. I understand that. I think a good starting place, if you were going to go back and kind of start from the ground up, would be going over that checklist again, just for the heck of it, making sure that you were hitting as many points as you could and saying, okay, it wasn't this, because that's valuable to nix the options that aren't applicable. But another thing you could do then is research hallucinations and what happens in the brain and how often they occur and the different stories that people tell of their hallucinations. Because I think that it is a common human experience. Lots and lots of people have these things, and they are often impetuses to find a religion or to adhere more strongly to a religion because we can't explain them currently a lot of the time. It's like, this happened. I don't know why. It must be X supernatural power. But I would suggest doing some more research on more the medical and scientific and biological causes of hallucinations and the statistics around that.
Definitely. And at the same time, I know it can be a sticking point for a lot of people, and so I just kind of want to throw this out there. As you're researching this, as you're looking it up, don't for a second think that you're devaluing something that has meaning for you. Just know that does not mean it correlates to what is true about the world. It means that you might really be into Egyptian history. In fact, my roommate, Holy Kool-Aid, did a number of videos on Egyptian history. The dude dove in for 2 months. And for 2 months, for 2 months, he'd be, Eric, nice. Check this out. Check this out. I was like, what is it? Look at this story. It's amazing. In fact, there are a couple of them that I really want him to share because they're great. But what he gets out of them is an awesome understanding of an incredible culture, right? What you might get out of it is the same reason that other people have different hobbies. And you can have a hobby, and that's okay. Don't devalue, that. But just don't take the truth claim of the gods as something that has to go with it, because you can appreciate something without having to accept supernatural claims.
Right. And also, you don't have to devalue the impact of the hallucination or the vision itself, right? Like, that was still a moving experience for you and something that maybe struck awe into you or
absolutely.
However, that is still a valid experience that you can use to inspire future action. And the group that you're a part of can be a very inspiring and fulfilling part of your life. But yeah, I think just making sure that you're not necessarily taking truth claims at face value in order to pursue something that you could do without entering that kind of cognitive dissonance.
Definitely. And just to back that up, I remember tripping out and, I was on drugs and communing with my ceiling fan. It sounds funny now, but when I walked away from it at the time, I felt like I had found something very profound. And it did impact the way that I behaved for a while. Does that mean that I actually communed with my ceiling fan and it spoke to me? Fuck no. But I can't then look at the past and say that it did not affect me at the time. because it did.
Okay. All right. Makes sense. Yeah, like.
Or here's another one. And I hate to bring it to a dark place, but I think it's worth bringing up, right? You can be negged into it too. You can be abused into it, right? You can be convinced that, like gaslighting. You can have a partner tell you this and this and this about you, which they just insist is true. You can come to own it, and it impact you. That doesn't mean that it actually happened, but the impact is there. And evidence of trauma, from that kind of thing is something that is incredibly common. So.
Yeah, maybe. I've been gaslit, so I that really does resonate with me as well. I've had that sort of thing happen with family, so it gets to you, and that might be what maybe is it knowingly or not knowingly going on with certain people. So I'll have to I'll re-examine the evidence here and see like what if there's a better reason than just that, but that would still be something if I would still take that truth claim there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. And if you come up with new questions or you find something that convinces you one way or the other, call back. Let us know how this journey's going.
Absolutely.
That is so cool. Thank you for calling in, man. And thank you for just being open and listening and talking. That was awesome.
That was a great call.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Right?
That was a really good call.
I liked it.